not part of the club. And a lot of you listening to me right here, right now, you're not part of the club either. I've been excluded on Oprah, you know.
On Oprah?
On Oprah. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang.
And now there's a voicemail, a recording tied to one of Epstein's victims, a woman who reportedly tried to warn people before everything went dark. And when investigators started pulling the thread, two names kept surfacing: Ellen and Oprah. Ice Cube didn't flinch. But here's what nobody is connecting: the voicemail, the missing girls, the buried interview, the friendships with Weinstein and Diddy. This isn't scattered gossip. This is a single story that powerful people have spent years making sure you never tell in order. Today, we're telling it in order. Before you can understand why this story matters, you have to understand why Ice Cube is the one telling it. O'Shea Jackson didn't come from industry connections or inherited access. He came from South Central Los Angeles at a time when that zip code was essentially a war zone. He poured everything he witnessed, the poverty, the violence, the systemic neglect, into music that didn't whisper. It screamed. And when NWA arrived, they didn't just change rap. They frightened an entire government apparatus. The FBI, the actual Federal Bureau of Investigation, sent a formal letter to their record label warning about the content of their music. Let that register. A group of teenagers from Compton scared federal law enforcement badly enough that agents put it in writing. And then Ice Cube did something the industry never expected. He pivoted on his own terms: movies, production, business. The Big Three basketball league, a stage he built from scratch for players the NBA had moved on from. Empire after empire, constructed entirely outside the traditional Hollywood machine. That independence, that's the detail that matters most. Because in Hollywood, independence isn't celebrated. It's identified, and it's handled.
I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, I'm an outsider.
He tried to work within the system, not on their terms, but through the legitimate channels that should have been available to a man of his stature. He went for the view. Door closed. He sought Oprah's platform. Door closed. He created Barbershop, one of the most beloved Black ensemble films of the 2000s, and the entire cast went on Oprah. Ice Cube, the creative force behind it, the producer, the architect, not invited. He made Black white. Same story. The cast got the platform. He got the locked door.
I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So, or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producer.
When the same door keeps closing on the same person, you stop calling it coincidence. You start asking who is holding the handle from the other side. Ice Cube has a name for them.
I'm talking about the club of gatekeepers that we all got to deal with. You know who they are.
He doesn't need to spell it out. He's been inside those rooms. He sat at those tables. He watched the machinery operate from the inside and chose to walk away from it. And he tells us something crucial about what happens when you do.
What makes them so mad is when you don't want to be a part of their fucking club.
Think about that for a moment. If the club was merely about opportunity and access, a refusal would be a shrug. You just don't get in. But if membership requires something: loyalty, silence, participation in things you'd rather not name, then a refusal is a threat. Because someone who declines the deal also declines to protect what the deal protects. That's when Hollywood stops being an industry and starts being something else entirely. Here's where the story shifts. And here's where you need to stay locked in. Epstein's files didn't just contain names on contact lists. They contained records of coordination, documented evidence that powerful people were not just adjacent to Epstein's world, but actively managing their relationship to it, managing their image inside it, deciding what would be said publicly and when and how. Among those documents, a specific email chain surfaced involving Sarah Ferguson's Ferguson, the Duchess of York. Ferguson was scheduled to appear on Oprah Winfrey's show, and before she walked onto that stage, she emailed Jeffrey Epstein. She told him exactly what Oprah was going to ask, and she asked him directly how he wanted her to answer. He responded. He drafted the answer. He coached the strategy, and she delivered it.
Oprah is limited in the context of the files, but there is clear collusion between Oprah and Jeffrey Epstein.
Oprah's platform was used actively, deliberately, strategically as part of an effort to soften Epstein's public image. Whether Oprah was aware of the coordination happening around her show, whether she was complicit or simply leveraged, is a question that remains unanswered. But the platform was used, the documents prove it, and the question of what she knew sits in the air, still waiting for an answer. Now here is where the reported voicemail enters this story. Among materials circulating in connection with Epstein victim testimony and case-adjacent documentation, a recorded message allegedly attributed to a victim who later died has been linked through the networks she described to names that keep appearing across multiple separate scandals. Two of those names, according to the threads investigators and online researchers have followed, are Ellen DeGeneres and Oprah Winfrey. No official confirmation has been made public. This is alleged. This is reported. This is what people close to the case have described. But in the context of what the documents already show, the allegation doesn't exist in a vacuum. It maps onto a pattern that is documented, not invented. An Ice Cube who watched this world operate from the inside says the pattern is exactly what he always knew was there.
I'm not part of the club, but I've been excluded on Oprah,
On Oprah?
On Oprah, yeah, I've been excluded.
Ellen DeGeneres spent years building one of the most beloved public personas in American entertainment. The kindness brand, the dance, the famous friends, the image of a woman who made television feel safe. And then the walls started cracking. Workplace allegations from former staff described a toxic environment that lived entirely behind the camera. An atmosphere, according to multiple accounts, where the warmth performed on screen wasn't what employees experienced when the cameras went off. Ellen publicly acknowledged it.
I learned that things happened here that never should have happened. I take that very seriously, and I want to say I am so sorry to the people who were affected.
But that's not the connection people are focused on. What the online investigation community has been stitching together is something different. Ellen's documented friendship with Diddy, the appearances, the shared social circles, the now resurfaced clips of her joking about after parties and language that sounds different today than it did when it aired.
That's a different type of party. It'll go from like 9:30 to like maybe 3 o'clock. And then, we have the top 2 floors of the hotel.
And then it will carry on there.
And then with Diddy's federal case exploding into public view, with investigators raiding homes, with victims speaking publicly, Ellen quietly moved to England. She and her wife reportedly left the United States permanently, citing Donald Trump's re-election as the reason. They reportedly put their Montecito mansion on the market. The stated reason may be entirely true, but the timing, the specific, precise timing, placed her departure directly alongside the most intense period of public pressure surrounding Diddy's case and the resurfacing of Epstein file documentation. In Hollywood, timing is never accidental, and when the internet noticed the overlap, the questions multiplied faster than any press statement could contain them.
She was quite friendly with that P. Diddy bloke, wasn't she?
Well, this is why I say release the Diddy files.
Yeah,
Files. Come on, Donald Trump, we want to know whose name.
So maybe she's hightailing out of there before all that is thrown at her as well.
Ice Cube's name got pulled into the Ellen conversation through viral clips, people pointing out that his warnings about gatekeepers, his exclusions, his descriptions of who controls access in Hollywood, all of it seemed to map directly onto the circles Ellen occupied. He never named her specifically, but the structure he described, the people who decide who gets a platform and who gets buried, the people whose anger is triggered not by attack facts, but simply by refusals. That structure has her fingerprints on it. And then there's the shadow that falls over all of it. Twitch. DJ Stephen Boss, a man who worked beside Ellen for years, who brought joy to every room he entered, who seemed by every public account to be someone in love with life. His death in December 2022 shocked everyone who knew him and everyone who didn't. His family asked the public to grieve respectfully and to stop spreading speculation. We honor that request. We name it only because the conspiracy threads that erupted afterward, threads that alleged secret knowledge, pressure to stay silent, connections to circles he never expected to be part of those threads exist. They spread, and they are part of the reason Ellen's name continues circulating in these investigations, even as her defenders push back. Tragedy does not equal conspiracy, but grief, unexplained and public, creates a space that rumor fills when truth takes too long to arrive. In 2007, Oprah Winfrey opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. $40 million, a flagship humanitarian legacy, a project she introduced to the world as proof that one person's platform could change the lives of the most vulnerable. Within months of opening, abuse allegations surfaced from inside the dormitories. A matron was accused of physically assaulting students. More than 15 girls came forward with documented complaints. 6 girls aged 13 to 15 were allegedly targeted in a systematic pattern of abuse. The matron faced 14 criminal charges, including indecent assault. Oprah responded publicly. She expressed devastation. She encouraged victims to come forward.
And I spoke to all the girls personally, and I encouraged all of them, any of them who had actually been harmed, to please come forward.
And then Oprah conducted her own investigation, and the matron was cleared. A former headmistress subsequently sued Oprah for defamation, alleging that Winfrey's public statements implied she knew about the abuse and covered it up. The lawsuit reached courts, the coverage faded, but the coverage never touched the darkest part of the story. Reports from researchers, from voices who had tracked the school since its inception, described girls going missing from among the graduating classes. Multiple girls. No comprehensive investigation broadcast at scale, no major platform follow-up. The story surfaced, created a ripple, and was buried.
All of the girls went missing that was at that school graduating class, and nobody is talking about it. I tell you why. Because you guys are protected, and I don't appreciate it. I want you guys tap in, tune in, comment. If you guys know about it, talk about it, spread the word, share this. Those girls in Africa went missing. That was at Oprah's school, Oprah Winfrey. Where were these girls at? Has anybody found them? Why is there not enough coverage on it?
Now, lay this against what the Epstein documents reveal about how predatory networks actually operate. Infrastructure of elite access. The use of philanthropic institutions, schools, foundations, humanitarian projects as legitimacy shields. The recurring pattern of vulnerable children inside elite-adjacent environments. The systematic suppression of follow-up coverage. We are not drawing a direct line. We are describing a pattern. And the pattern is documented, and the silence around it demands an explanation that no one with a major platform has yet provided. Harvey Weinstein ran Hollywood for decades through a combination of genuine talent and terrifying leverage. Everyone knew. The allegations about his behavior were an open secret inside the industry, whispered at parties, referenced in jokes, understood in the hallways of every major studio. And Oprah Winfrey was photographed beside him, smiling at events where his name alone filled rooms with the most powerful people in the world. When the walls finally fell, when dozens of women broke their silence, and the story that had been suppressed for years exploded into public view, everyone who had been standing next to Harvey suddenly had somewhere else to be. Oprah pivoted publicly to become a champion of the Me Too movement. Speeches, platforms, the image of an ally. Singer Seal wasn't buying it. His social media posts directed expected at Oprah from a man who had sat across from her on television, who had been inside that world, said clearly and without ambiguity, you knew. You had heard the rumors. You had no idea he captioned was not the truth. Then R. Kelly, a case that took 2 decades and the sustained courage of survivors to finally crack open. Oprah had the story. She had the interview. She had 2 of his accusers sitting across from her, willing to speak on record. And then the interview never aired. The footage sat on a hard drive somewhere while R. Kelly continued operating, continued performing, continued accessing victims. No complete public explanation has ever been given for why that interview was buried. Then Diddy, the parties, the federal investigation, the raids, the victims speaking publicly about what happened inside those circles. And Oprah was photographed with him. She appeared at his events. She was woven into the same social fabric.
I believe he's being targeted.
You believe he's being targeted?
Yeah. I believe, somebody, has the power to pull the trigger to make, this stuff, this domino effect happen.
Weinstein, Kelly, Combs, Epstein through the Sarah Ferguson coordination. That's not a collection of unfortunate associations. That is a pattern with a shape. And Ice Cube has been describing that shape without always naming every name for years. Monique understood it. She won an Academy Award for Precious, one of the most raw and devastating performances of the 2000s. It should have been a launching pad. Instead, her career was quietly put on ice. She says she knows who did it. And she says one of those people is Oprah Winfrey.
I got labeled as difficult because I said one word, and that was no. Now, I said no to some very powerful people. What Tyler Perry showed me, Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Lionsgate. When you don't do what we ask you to do, we'll take your livelihood.
Not will be disappointed. Not will move on. We will take your livelihood. That is not the language of a disappointed collaborator. That is the language of a threat. And Monique says it came directly from the circle that includes Oprah Winfrey. Dave Chappelle walked away from $50 million at the peak of his fame in a move that the entertainment press spent years trying to explain as a breakdown, a crack, an instability. They mocked him. They diagnosed him from a distance. They used his departure as proof that he couldn't handle success, and Oprah reportedly joined in. Reports at the time indicated she mocked him publicly, but Chappelle told us exactly what happened in his own words through a metaphor that anyone willing to listen could decode.
It was called a salt trap. I didn't know this. Apparently baboons love salt.
Okay.
So they put a lump of salt in a hole, and they wait for the baboon. The baboon comes, sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the salt. Salt makes his hand bigger, and he's trapped. He can't get his hand out. Now, if he's smart, all he does is let go of the salt. Baboon doesn't want to let go of the salt. Then the bushman just comes, takes the baboon, throws him in the cage, and gives him all the salt he wants. And then the baboon gets thirsty. The bushman lets him out of the cage. The first place the baboon runs to is water. Bushman follows him, and they both drink to their fill. And in that analogy, I felt like the baboon.
The $50 million was the salt, something involving the systematic access to and control of vulnerable populations, something whose full scope he was allegedly prepared to describe in detail to federal prosecutors. On July 29, 2019, weeks before his death, Epstein's legal team and federal prosecutors were in documented negotiations about the possibility of his cooperation. He was going to name names. According to an FBI record, those names would have reached presidents, royalty, and Silicon Valley billionaires.
According to an FBI record, Epstein was possibly about to cooperate with the feds right before he died. That on July 29, 2019, his lawyers and the federal prosecutors in this case, in very general terms, discussed the possibility of a resolution of the case and the possibility of the defendant's cooperation.
He was about to name everyone, and then he was dead, officially a suicide. The after-party clips, the friendships with people now facing federal investigation, the departure that the internet refuses to accept as coincidence.
Some platforms will not have me on.
Why?
They don't like that I'm, an independent thinker. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, I'm an outsider. And so, I'm not part of the club. but I've been excluded.
Ice Cube's warning was never paranoia. It was a preview. A man who had been inside those rooms, who had sat at those tables, who had watched the machinery operate, choosing to walk away and then choosing to talk about why. The question isn't whether the pattern exists. He refused the deal. He found the bypass. And he has never stopped talking. We're living in the sequel to everything he warned us about. And the truth, the full truth, the documented truth, the truth that the most powerful people in the world spent the most money in the world to bury is still coming. If this video reached you, share it before it gets buried.